Welcome to Table Topic, the podcast where we bring real conversations to the table. Faith, business, mindset, and social insight, all through the lens of progress and purpose. I'm your host, Terrell Jackson, a believer, entrepreneur, lifelong student of human behavior. I hold a degree in sociology from the University of Buffalo with graduate work in business administration and leadership. But more than that, I'm someone who's learned to turn lessons into leverages through all of my student athlete experiences and my business endeavors, and faith into forward motion through my strong belief in God. Each week, we'll pull up a chair and unpack real topics that shape our lives. The things we all think about, but rarely talk about out loud. We'll challenge assumptions, flip a few tables, and uncover truths that are hidden underneath them. If you're ready to think deeper and grow stronger and live with more ownership, you're in the right place. So let's get started. Because the topic on the table today is ownership. Not just what we have, but what we must take responsibility for. Today, I'm going to be discussing ownership, like I said, and I'm going to give you 4 takeaways with examples of real life experiences, statistics, some food for thought, a few motivational quotes, and ultimately a challenge to take on your version of what's going on in your life so that we can all make progress together. Let's get into it. Now, I am a person who, when I think about ownership, even though the very definition of ownership, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is the act or state or right of possessing something. The act, state, or right of possessing something. That's how the dictionary literally defines ownership. But for myself, it's deeper than that. But it's because before I was even reading the dictionary, I was understanding that I liked having my own space. I liked having my own shoes that I didn't have to share, the ones that I didn't have to share. I liked being able to have control of the things that I liked. One of the first things that I really believe that affected my life as far as ownership is when I got my very own basketball goal. Because before that, it was just about, the bigger kids they took over the court. They didn't let us little kids play when they were playing. And I wasn't strong enough yet, and I wasn't good enough yet to earn my way on the court. So I only had to be able to practice, only had limited time to practice when the big kids wasn't on the court. And so for me, ownership started with my very first basketball goal. And that's when I realized that ownership not only is something that people say you own, but ownership is related to was related to a certain freedom for me. And within that freedom, ownership became something that I always focused on. The reason that I understood ownership more than just the basketball court and free time, it wasn't about control. It was actually that I was being molded as a young kid, observing my grandfather and my father. And so my grandfather, he owned nightclubs. The whole time I was growing up, my grandfather owned a business. He either owned nightclubs or he owned a restaurant. And so I remember going with him, me and my other cousin, a lot of times to go pick up beer that he would sell in the clubs. And so he went to Budweiser, or he went to the company. He got the cases, or he got the keg, or whatever it was. He brought it back to his facility and he sold it. And the thing was, that's very different than going to the store grabbing one beer. And so once I went in the store, every time after that I went in the store, I always know that all the products that are on the table, this store is going to get them from somebody else. And so when we were young, it's like all my friends, one thing we did, if we got a hold of $5, however we got a hold of it, we always walked to the store. We want to get a drink, we want to get some chips, whatever snack we preferred. Unless you was my homeboy, my big boy, he always wanted that little pint of ice cream. And so if I could get a pint of ice cream, that's great. But if you got to hold of $10 and $20, you could do more with it. You could go to the movies and still have money left over. You can get snacks. You had a few days worth of money if you got a hold of 20. But most of the time it was just $5 for us. But within that, going to the store, like I said, I had already had it in my mind that I know that these people get these products from the distributor. And I know that they get to charge what they charge and keep all of the money because they're getting it for a lower price. This is what I was thinking as a kid. And so what I did was somehow, some way, I ended up getting a hold of a soda machine. And I remember going to Sam's with my grandfather, talking about what flavors of sodas that I wanted to sell. I remember talking about what price that I wanted to sell them at and how much profit that I should have each month. And so I did that. Went and got a soda machine, put that soda machine in front of my house, and all the kids that would come over and play basketball, all their parents, everybody in the neighborhood for the most part, on that little street in those little few one and a half block radius, a lot of them came to my house to buy sodas. And for me, that was one of my first monetary experiences with ownership. A beautiful thing. I got to be able to keep all the money afterwards. But then I learned, hey, you can keep all this money and spend all this money, but then your business stops. So that's how we talk about, going from owning things to owning outcomes. And so what I realized was that it wasn't just that I wanted to own what I was doing, it's that I wanted to own the decisions that I could make. I had a goal that I wanted to achieve, and I didn't want too many people's opinions and traditions standing in the way of what I wanted. Meaning, oh, you can't get a job till you're 15. You can't get a job till you're 16. Well, I'm 11 and 12 years old, and I want these Jordans. I want to be able to go to the movies. Like, I want school clothes more than I want my freedom. And so that's why for me, it was going from owning things to owning the outcome. So fast forward, I got the soda machine experience. Fast forward, I'm in college. I'm done with college. I've always been fascinated with motorcycles. I think I watched the movie Biker Boys at least 60, 70, maybe 100 times. On repeat, every single time I got a chance, I watched Biker Boys. I pictured myself on that bike. I was him in my head. I felt like by the time I got a motorcycle, I would know how to ride it because I've watched Biker Boys so many times. But here's the thing. I played college football, like I said, at the University of Buffalo. And on our contract, it said you are not allowed to ride on anything with two wheels. Now, fast forward, my career did not end like I planned it. It ended on an injury. I'll go deeper into that in future episodes, but just know I did do well at the university. I did graduate, and I was no longer able to play football. So at the end of my college career, I saved up my last check, and I went online and I purchased a motorcycle for $1,000. Mind you, we're talking about ownership. I had always steered away from payments because growing up, you always hear people say, bills. Oh man, I got bills. Well, turn off the lights because you're going to make the bill high, or don't go in and out. You letting the air out, the electricity is going to be higher. Or, man, I can't get that this week, or I can't get that right now because I had to pay bills. So my relationship with bills is that I was always appreciative that I did come up in a household that that was able to afford bills for the most part. But I also was upset at how many things bills blocked me from getting that I actually wanted. And so it was not an option for me to finance a motorcycle. I don't even know if I had the credit for it at that time. But There was a motorcycle listed online. I went online. I was like, look, you wanted it for 1,500. All I got is $1,000. And I'm getting ready to go home in about 2 weeks. So either you take it or you don't. And this was in December. In Buffalo, might you add. It's snow outside. Now, essentially, I ended up buying that motorcycle for $1,000. But here's the thing. Like I said, I'm getting ready to go home in 2 weeks. I bought the motorcycle because I was fascinated with motorcycles and absolutely had to get one. And I had ownership in the back of my head, so I knew how to accumulate it, but I didn't even have a plan for what I was going to do with it. So I rode the bike. I taught myself how to ride the bike. I'm stop, start, stop, start, go back, stop, start. Eventually, I mustered up enough courage to go 100 yards, then 200 yards, then 300 yards. Then I look down. I've been on this motorcycle all day. I need gas. So I guess now I have to ride it to the store to get gas. It's 20 degrees. I'm freezing cold. Got one helmet that came with the bike. No gloves, by the way. I'm freezing cold. I ride. I look crazy because I'm on a motorcycle in Buffalo, New York, in 20 degrees. I ride to the store. I ride back. I rode that motorcycle for as much as I could. Then I decided, you know what? I'm getting ready to go home. I don't even know where I'm going to put this bike. And I know people are going to go crazy if they figure out I have a bike. So what did I do? I sold the bike. And guess what? Because when I got that bike for $1,000, I got a piece of paper called a title. When I sold the bike, all the money came back to me. And that's what introduced me into flipping motorcycles. And for the next few months and throughout the next couple of years, that's what I decided to do. That was my introduction to ownership and really my introduction to, business as far as value, networking, marketing, and negotiating. So most of us equate ownership with property or possessions, but real ownership begins with the choices that shape our progress. Like I said, I could have took that first money from that first motorcycle, the profit that I had, and spent all of it. But what I did was I tried to save up the money to sustain myself and not have to ask for things as much as I would have had I not saved that money. So like I said, most of us equate ownership with property or possessions, but real ownership begins with the choices that shape our progress. So now, with that being said, I want to present a couple statistics. 65% of people in America own their home, but only 40% have no mortgage. 92% of households own one car, at least one car as far as households, but only 29% pay cash. Now, what am I saying that for? I'm saying that to say we own things, but few of us have actually owned the freedom that comes with them. See what I'm saying? A lot of us own things, but few of us actually own the freedom that comes with them. And so there's nothing wrong with progress. There's nothing wrong with progress, but today we're just talking about ownership, and where there are levels of ownerships, and there are stages of ownerships, and then there's ultimately a responsibility of ownership. So let's get into it. The first point that I want to make is there's always room to improve how we spend our time and money. So we have to acknowledge room for growth. Let me say that again. There's always a way to improve how we spend our time and money. So we always have to acknowledge room for growth. So here's the thing. And let me put this on right here, because for the next 3 points, this is going to be relevant. So let me do this. And for those who you can't see who on the audio, I just put on a hat. with the letters OMSSOS and how to pronounce it on the top. So let me say this. When I first started a brand, okay? I started a brand, and okay, let me just say this. In short, let me say this. I had a brand going called OMSO, OMSSOS, stood for Organized Mind Society Students of Success. And it's pronounced OMSO. Essentially saying that everyone has a unique purpose about them. Everyone has a way to stand out. Everyone has a process that if we find the right group and we get on the right mentality, that we can go further than anybody else, has ever thought of. Because that's what we were born to do. And I call that thing genius. And everyone has a form of it. It's just up to us to prove it. So here I am back home for a few years after college, and I started a business. I somehow I was able to get a loan of $5,000. Okay. I had this $5,000, and mind you, I came up watching my grandfather run these clubs, run these events, run these restaurants, and I'm back home and I'm thinking about ownership. Like I said, the only job that I could get at the time was a job working at a hotel, and that hotel was paying me $8 an hour. Though I'm very appreciative of $8 an hour at the hotel, I looked at what the managers made. I looked at what the assistant managers made. I looked at what the housekeeping made, and I just needed to do more. I'm newly at home. I've graduated. I made more money from flipping one motorcycle than I could have in a month working at the hotel. So it's not that I was going to quit. I just needed to do more with my time. And so what I did was I got off at 3 o'clock at the hotel. I think I worked from, 8 to 3? 8 to, or 7 to 3, or 8 to 4, something like that. I think I usually got off at 3 o'clock. And so, speaking on my first point, acknowledge room for growth. There's always ways to improve how we spend our money. And so what I was tired of was getting a little few $100s or a little bit of money and spending it, and then having to pay bills, or not even, like, it went out too fast. So I said, I'm going to take the chance to make an investment. And I got this loan, and I feel like I was doing good. You know what I mean? I put this money into the business. I was working at the hotel, getting off at the hotel, working the business, getting off at the hotel, working the business, getting off at the hotel, working the business. And I was spending money out of that loan, but I still had a loan amount that I had to pay. So I'm spending money out of the loan, and basically I look up in 6 months, and I wasn't making the money that I wanted to make out of the building, because I had all these ideas, but I didn't actually sit down and make a legit business plan. Like, I was just going off of the money that I had. And after 6 months, I looked up and I couldn't even for some reason I couldn't even afford to pay the loan consistently. And so what happened was, in all transparency, it was a secure loan. And so, we didn't want to make up, the person that had co-signed for me and secured the loan with cash didn't want to mess up credit, because I wasn't knowing when I could pay it. And so, because I'm making so little money at the hotel. And so basically, I ended up leaving after the 6 months out of that building. No money more than I had, actually less, because I had been taking the money from the job, trying to put it into the business, trying to balance everything. And so it just became a thing where that money that I gained in full ownership, taking full ownership, that money that I made, the money that I got as a loan ended up being putting me off in a worse position than if I would have just kept working at the hotel and slowly saving. And so, my thing was that. My thing was that I turned that side hustle into a learning experience. You know what I mean? Because college is tens of thousands of dollars. That $5,000 was the price of the lesson that I learned to always, think about and acknowledge that there's room for growth. Where can I improve how I spend my time and how I spend my money? And the key takeaway for that is start by auditing how you steward what you already have. Your schedule, your spending, and your attention. Because like I said, I got the $5,000 loan, but 6 months later, I end up spending money from my job to try to keep up with the building that I bought when it wasn't making money fast enough with my events and the different events and the talent that I was hosting and things like that. It's just a long way from what my grandfather had to do. That's what I learned. And so I just needed a better way to steward my time. And that's why I say to you, don't make the mistake of not having your time and your money right now figured out and maximized, so you won't take on something else that seems like a better idea but actually puts you at more of a disadvantage. And that's what ended up happening to me. So, full ownership, yes. Did I own the building? Yes, absolutely. Could I tell people when to come and when not to come? Absolutely. Could I charge what I wanted to charge at the door? Absolutely. Did I have the keys? Absolutely. It was my building. I took ownership of that building for 6 months. But also, true to what we're talking about today, I had to take ownership for the decisions that I wasn't making correctly. And I could have spent my time and money more wisely to make that more of, a beneficial situation. But like I said, that was a learning lesson. So, number 2, improvements start with honest ownership of our flaws. You know what I mean? Owning our weakness is how we begin to improve our position. Owning our weakness is how we begin to improve our position, right? And so if I know that for me, I was in a place where that building had went out. Okay, I had lost some money. Okay, boom, boom, boom. What do I do now? What do I do now? I need to go learn more about business. I need to go learn actually about business. Remember, I had graduated with a degree and a bachelor's degree in sociology, so I was always good with seeing trends with people and like interacting and getting customers and like marketing. I was always good with that because I see things in people and how to communicate to people that the normal person doesn't. That's one of my gifts. And so I took ownership and took inventory of myself and said, you know what? I'm limited in my knowledge, like my updated knowledge. That soda machine and all that stuff I was doing, that was 15 years ago. That was 10 years. That was when I was a kid, a little teenager. Times are different now. The world is changing. I need to go to school and improve on my weaknesses. So improvement starts with honest ownership of flaws. My flaw was that I didn't have the knowledge that I actually needed. So I began to look up. I thought it was like, man, I'm in this small town. I think I have maximized it. But I didn't take full ownership of my weakness. But when I began to do that, that's when I began to improve my position. My weakness is I thought that I needed a building to run a business. And at this time, the internet and social media is taking off. The internet and social media is taking off. So I was like, you know what? Let's do the brand. That's why if you can see me, you see that I have one of my pieces of apparel on. And I had to dust this off. You know what I mean? But we'll get to that soon. Basically, I ended up starting this brand because I said, you know what? I don't need a business. I don't need a building to run a business. So let's start a brand. So I transitioned from the building and I started selling t-shirts and hats and things like that. You know what I mean? And so when I stopped looking at, man, people wasn't showing, it started raining, and you know, I had all these reasons why I feel like people should have supported me more and that it should have succeeded more. But then I acknowledged my weakness. You know, it was my business decision. It was my discipline. It was my consistency. You know, it was my missed opportunity as far as like capitalizing on the actual industry where I was at. And then I was like, you know what? I had to ask myself, in which I encourage you to ask yourself, where am I giving away my where am I giving away responsibility that actually belongs to me? And once I did that, you know, that's when I launched the clothing brand. I did good. It was a lot of sales being made, a lot of people supporting me, you know, consistent, repeat customers, selling at a good price. Everything was good. I was gaining buzz and I was gaining momentum. And I ended up deciding to, because my manufacturer was in Houston, and because Houston was a city where you could get everything cheaper as far as the materials, as far as the embroidery, as far as, you know, businesses. Like I looked up the statistics and it was more millionaire. It was one of the top 10 cities in the world for millionaires per household net worth income. So I'm like, I'm moving to Houston. So I'm in the MBA program. I'm going to Houston and I'm learning this stuff and I'm making sales. I'm meeting people. And here's the difference though. I came from a small town, or you could say smaller city, where it's costing me $20 in a tank. You know what I mean? Nobody lives more than 10 miles away, 6 miles away. You know what I mean? The nearest city is 20 minutes away. The next furthest city is 35. The next, you know what I mean? You can get to Austin in 45 to 50 minutes. And so I'm used to being able to move around with less money. I know everybody in this city. So it's like, you know, things came easier as far as moving around and getting people to meet me here and getting people to pull up, and people knew me so they would send me money or tell my parents or my relatives. So it's like I knew the lay of the land, and so it was more of a convenience to make these sales, to pitch these people. My reputation was already solidified, but that was slowing up, and I needed to try to increase the brand, and I needed to try to scale and go to the next level. So I moved to Houston, like I said. Now, once I'm in Houston, it's 30, 45 minutes, you know what I mean? Commutes in the same city. 20 minutes is up the street. You got traffic. Don't nobody know me, so it's not like come meet at my house. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know no relatives to leave shirts with and deliver for me. I don't know, like, all my systems that I had established from the jump didn't work out here. And so my progress was slowing, and I had to do something. So one of the things that I was doing was simultaneously I was going to school. I had got in the MBA program, Master's in Business Administration. And because I was a sociology undergrad, then I had to do all these prerequisites for business administration and then go into the actual MBA program. And that's why I say I got 3 years MBA experience because my whole first year plus a few classes was just getting the business college foundation, because I had a business background in real life, but I never had the business. I didn't go to college for business. So a year's going by, another year's going by, and my progress is slowing down. And I'm trying to figure out, like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? So at this point, I don't have the money anymore to even print shirts. I don't even have the money to even go try to do events. And I don't even have the money to build a website and keep the website on consistently. Like, I'm running out of money, and I'm just newly married. I'm just trying to start, trying to lock in with my spouse and lead the household and all of this, trying to move her to where I'm at. So life is hitting me. Life is hitting me. The business still got to go, but it's slowing down. I'm not making no money. The brand is slowing down. Like, I'm having to ask for money. I'm like, no, this not me. This not me. I was owning my weakness. My weakness was cash at that point. My weakness was leverage at that point. And my weakness was I was at a standstill. I was at a standstill. I had the idea. I had the energy. I had the want to, but the resources weren't connecting with what I could do. I wasn't connecting it. And so what did I do? I left the MBA program and I went to go get a commercial driver's license. You know what I mean? Here it is. We're talking about ownership. I had to acknowledge that, I wasn't making progress. I wasn't making progress. So I left the MBA program to go get a CDL. Fast forward, it all works out. As far as making money, I'm in the oil field. Let's just say that. Fast forward, make a long story short, I'm in the oil field. Now, this brings me to my third point. Don't let busyness destroy your business. Let me say that again. Don't let busyness destroy your business. So, understand, activity is not always progress. So, I'm going to tell you, like I said, I'm in the oil field now. I'm working hard. I'm making money. I'm making good money. I no longer have to worry about my girl giving me money. I no longer have to worry about not being able to afford my bills. I no longer have to worry about not being able to afford, whatever I want to. I ain't gonna say whatever, but to the most part, I have livable wages. Even though I have accumulated, I launched another business in the oil field, a trucking company. I have livable wages, but I still have my truck note. You know what I mean? Because I know we talking about ownership. I own the business, not all of the equipment. It's smart to lease equipment first until you see how things are gonna work out. And so I still had bills, but here's the smart. Let me stay on topic. I had launched another business. I'm in the oil field. I'm making good money, 6-figure money. So here's the thing, though. I'm so tired at the end of the day. That I don't even have the energy to even think about my brand. I don't even have the free time to go and drive to a new place to see how much they manufacture t-shirts for. I don't even have the time to go to these events, these conventions to try to push my brand. Like, I don't even have the time anymore. And when I do have the time, I am drained, dead tired. It's times where I'm so tired that I'm coming home and I'm having to pull over 4 and 5 times before I get home just to make sure I don't crash. And this is no drinking, no nothing, like, honest. You know what I'm saying? Just that fatigue. It's times that I couldn't even make it home because of my clock went out on my truck. So I had to stay out in the field. And so I say that to say that busyness destroyed my other business, which was the brand that I even got the job in the first place for, to even finance it. And so, you know, this is what I would say. I was overwhelmed. I was distracted. I was doing more instead of doing better. And when I say I was doing better, yes, I was doing better financially. But here's the thing. I know I have the mental capacity and I had the know-how and the wherewithal to take away one day out of that week to focus on my brand. To take away out of 1 year, I could have took 2 weeks of vacation just to go do what I need to do to keep that other brand alive because I had the funding for it. Because ownership, once again, it's ownership. It's my contract. It's my truck. I don't have to go in when I don't want to go in. But if you don't go in, you don't make money. But I make my schedule for the most part, but I had to stick to my commitment. But there's no set time to be on the clock and off the clock. There's no set time. So I had ownership, but I still had to take ownership. You know what I'm saying? Meaning like I'm too tired. I'm so busy that it's killing my other business. And so what I would say to that is prioritize progress task over comfort task. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, it's comfortable to just keep going because you're making all this money. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Like, that's the comfortable thing to do. You out there for money. But what's uncomfortable is to know how much money you gonna miss if you take off for a day. But how much progress can you make when you take off for that day to focus on your other business? You know what I mean? You can't manage what you don't measure. And you can't grow what you don't own. You see what I'm saying? So from this standpoint, I was measuring my money, but I wasn't measuring my time correctly. So my time was poorly managed as it relates to the progress that I could have made. I was too busy for my business. And then I couldn't grow my other business because I wasn't owning my time. You see what I'm saying? So, that brings me into the last point. That brings me into my last point. Owning the negatives gives you space to own the positives. See what I'm saying? Own the negative things to sustain the positives. And so if I had understood that all I had to do was take 1 day off a week, set aside 1 day, could have been 1 day every 2 weeks, but set aside 1 day to continue my brand, to look into my brand, to research my brand, to get in online, do ads, even hire somebody to help market it, or even I even had enough leftover money to hire a small team to help me push that brand and have an online presence and post on social media. You know what I mean? Because I was living what the brand stood for, but I had no proof because I wasn't taking time aside for it. So if I had owned the negative part of what I was doing, which is, yeah, you're making good money, but you're taking all your time away from your other business. Had I have owned that, then it would have afforded me the right to sustain not only my new company that's making a bunch of money, but my original company that gave me my first start and my foundation, that technically never did bad because I didn't have technically it never did bad. It just went to a standstill because the cash ran out. So it wasn't like I was paying a building like last time. You know what I mean? I didn't have no monthly fees tied to that company. I just had a bunch of apparel and different things that I hadn't sold yet sitting around. And so if I had, like I said, key point 4, Own the negatives to sustain the positives. That's all I'm saying. You know, only the negatives gives you space to own the positive. So fast forward, the oil field shuts down, and now I'm trying to figure out, like, I got all this, I ain't gonna say all this, but I got a little bit of money left, and that started coming in, but at this time life is still going. Had my kid in a house now, not an apartment, so we got mortgage, we got kids coming up, daycare coming up. I can't be gone this much anymore. Like, my whole world has shifted, and I wasn't able to sustain either the oil field or my other business, because number one, the oil field shut down and my life changed, had my kid, had to transition how I spend my time and make my money. Number two, I didn't put the effort into my personal company. Because I was making the money, I stopped focusing on the dream, the big picture, and didn't build the brand. So I ended up losing 2 companies at one time, when technically the only thing I did wrong was mismanage my time, didn't manage my resources as I should. I had ownership, man. I still own these 2 businesses. I still own them, but what are they bringing in at this point? Because I didn't fully own the negativity of them in the moment enough to correct it. You know what I mean? And so that's all I'm saying. You know, that's all I'm saying. Don't hide from mistakes. Harvest them. Don't hide from mistakes. Harvest them. Ownership is the soil that growth grows in. Ownership is the soil that growth grows in. So let me go back over those 4 points real quick. Number one, acknowledge that there are always ways to improve how we spend our time and money. Number two, owning our weaknesses is how we begin to improve our position. Number three, don't let your busyness destroy your business. Number four, owning the negatives gives you space to own the positives. You know what I mean? So now is the time where we call this table flip. You know, we call this table flip. This a myth busting moment. So we're gonna flip the table on this. The topic on the table is ownership, but let's flip the table and bust this myth real quick. The myth: ownership is about having things. I'm gonna flip it and say this: ownership is about handling things. You can rent a house but still own your vision. You can lease a car but still own your character. So ownership is not fully about having things. Yeah. You know what I mean? So our next segment, you know, we got to add this in. We're going to look under the table. We put the topic on the table. We flip the table. Now we got to look under the table. You know what I mean? It's a hidden truth. And it's under the table. What you refuse to own will eventually own you. Avoiding responsibility for finances, habits, or time doesn't free us. It binds us quietly. So just like I said, I wasn't responsible with my time because I was chasing money. And so I made a lot of money, but and the breaks that I took could allow me to reset mentally and own the fact that I got a habit of overworking. I got a habit of working so hard that I almost hit burnout, or I do hit burnout. So, you know, they say the chains of bad habits are too light to be felt until they too heavy to be broken. So a hidden truth is that what we refuse to own will eventually own us. So we got to keep self-awareness. We got to be good stewards over our time and money. And we got to walk by faith. Because nobody came to me ever and said, hey, start a brand. Nobody came to me ever and said, hey, this is what you should name your trucking company. Start a trucking company. All of that was faith. So thank God for faith. You know what I mean? But I have to be a good steward over faith because I plan on keep going. So, always, you know, it's always room to improve time and money. Own the weakness to improve the position. Don't let busyness kill your business. Owning negatives sustains positive. So this week, I want you to write down an area of your life where you've been avoiding responsibility. Take one step toward owning it. And so now it's your turn. What's on your table? This Terrell Jackson. It's been another episode of Table Talk. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next week. God bless. Peace.